Hey guys, welcome to the Light Side Podcast. My name is Sholette. I'm your host, and I'm so excited about today's topic. I've been talking about this episode for some time about sharing my personal manifestation stories and how it all unfolded. But also, as I was thinking about the stories, so much kept coming to my mind. So I want to do a brief intro as to what I'm referring to when I speak about manifesting. And if you've been here and if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I did a deep dive on the law of attraction and how to effectively manifest. If you want to listen to that, it's really a practical how-to talking about the science of it all as well. That's episode 4. So if you want to go back and listen to it, I highly suggest doing so because I'm not going to go into as much of a deep dive into all of the hows and all of the practical tips and tools and tricks when it comes to manifesting. But I think the stories are going to be a really fun addition. You guys, honestly and truly speaking, my life has been accumulation of manifestations. My life completely and drastically changed. Now I can say that in hindsight. Back in 2009, I want to say 2008, 2009, after I read and watched the movie The Secret. And it gives me chills thinking about it because my life really took a massive shift. It's like I changed timelines. And the way I know that is when I look back on my life then and where my life was, not just me, but my family's and where we are now. It is such a dramatic shift. And it has been quite some time where a lot of the stories connect and I can see the patterns. And so I'm really, really excited to talk about it. But before I talk about my manifestation stories, I just want to make sure that we're aligned and on the same page as to what I mean and what I'm referring to when I talk about manifesting and some of the mindset shifts that I believe are required. And so I hope it's helpful briefly so that we're on the same page. I don't view manifestation or manifesting much differently than how we have for centuries and really all the way back to ancient times have been praying. I view it as we're calling in or asking for something we want to experience and giving thanks to it, not just because we're giving thanks for it coming to fruition, for it coming our way, for manifesting into our lives, but because we identified something. There is an energetic alignment to that thing that we want because by wanting it, we are affirming that we're meant to experience it. I posted about this sometime last year on my Instagram and one of the reels I created, sharing that I have a belief that the things we manifest are things that our soul has had an innate knowing that we need to experience in this lifetime, whether it's as a lesson or blessing, that's TBD, to be confirmed, but giving thanks for it. One, some people think that it's all about the law of assumption or being delulu and saying that, oh, I already have it, which yes, you can because it's all about matching to the timeline. But the way I'm proposing to think about it, kind of a mindset shift that I'm suggesting, is to think of it as, thank you. I'm so grateful for this because I now have identified that there is something I want to experience. And because I want to experience it, I'm ready for it and I'm going to align my energy to it. It means that I'm already in alignment with it. And now I need to really tune into that frequency more to really strengthen the connection. Think of it as like tuning into a radio station. There are some radio stations, as you're finding it, you are, hearing fuzz. And then once you really hit the dial, you can hear clearly. It's like tuning your energy into it so much, aligning yourself to it so much that it becomes so clear that you start receiving. And so really prior to that, when there's the fuzziness, you're seeing maybe hints and signs and maybe a little bit, but not all of it. Really, I love the radio analogy the best. It's a really popular analogy when it comes to thinking about manifesting. And I highly suggest it as like a way of keeping yourself on track when it comes to like Why haven't I received this yet? Think about the radio. Think about tuning into it and aligning your energy to it. If we are able to really get into that energy of gratitude, of that deep level of faith, there's this deep rooted trust that what you want can be and that it will be. So why not give thanks for it now? Because the sooner I shift my energy to that of having it, because we know it's only a matter of time, the sooner we'll align with it. Because again, it's all about tuning into that radio frequency. It's all about aligning ourselves to the energy of someone who is already a match for it. And that someone can be you if you can match your energy to it. Someone that is already receiving it. And that is so powerful. It's seriously the secret sauce. And I want to clarify if I'm losing anyone that tends to have a very logical mind about manifesting. If you're that person that automatically starts thinking about the how, I have something to share that I think will help make it click even more. But before I say that, just think about someone who already has a lot of opportunities because they've been successful in their field. Think about someone, maybe it's the wealth that you want to acquire. Maybe it's someone who has the relationship. Maybe you're out of a job and you've been applying to jobs for some time and you're losing hope and you're like, I just want a job. Like, I just want a job already. Well, what I suggest you do, think about what you will do once you have that job. What will your routine be like? Will you wake up at a certain time, get ready, and what time will you wake up? Really consider your entire routine and start behaving as someone who already has that job. You know, they always say this in so many contexts, and so I know I've talked about this in other episodes, so I'm not going to go on a tangent, but really think about what it is that you want and fast forward to the future version of you that has what you want. What will that version of you do? And start doing that and start giving thanks for that thing that you want. This is exactly how you become an energetic match, because your feelings will begin to elevate. The key here is to match our feelings to the things that we want to call in. I loved something I heard last week on the Weekly Energy Boost podcast. They were talking about how the times we should be giving thanks are the times when things aren't going well, when we're struggling, when we are, in a rut. And the times we should be praying and asking for help are the times when things are going well. That really is a little counterintuitive. Most of us are praying and asking for help when we need help, and we're giving thanks and being grateful when things are going well. Well, the idea is to swap that. And I love that so much because that just aligns perfectly with the whole idea of manifesting. What happens is when things are not going well and we're praying and asking for help, we're praying from a place of lack. Whereas the teaching is telling us to give thanks in those times, because that's when you'll start receiving. Not when you're reaching from a place of lack. When you're giving thanks, you're saying thanks from a place of having. I think that's the secret that if everyone can keep in mind, honestly, I think the world will become so much more high vibrational, because people will be getting the things that they want. They'll be reaching from a place of wholeness. They'll be reaching from a place of abundance. And I just love it so much. I love that thought frame, and really just keeping in mind that if we want something, to be thankful for it as if we already have it, to be thankful for what we do have. If that's too far out of reach for you, be thankful for what you do have. And I want to go back to that person that I suggested automatically starts thinking about the how. The beauty of all of this with manifestation is learning how to let go and learning to let go of the how. And that's not by saying by letting go, we're letting go of effort. We're letting go of showing up. We're letting go of taking action. No, we just mean we're letting go of the need to know how it will happen and letting go of the micromanaging aspect and allowing our minds to be open to the process and the possibilities that can be. So that if an opportunity or a door opens for us that may lead us there eventually, we don't knock it down or choose not to enter because we assume we already know that is not the door. That is not the way. Because what really keeps us stuck the most is thinking we know everything. And so letting go of the how, in my mind, is equivalent to trusting, being open-minded to nudges, to ideas, and different ways of going about getting to where you want. Letting go of the how to me is being open that it may unfold way differently than you might have in mind or that you expect it to. And I have a great story for this, actually. I think it's just so relevant, and it was a really big life change for me. And so I'll share that in just a second. What I'm trying to convey with that is that through surrendering the how, we're open to the ideas or actions that we might need to take to get there. And we'll continue to take the actions that we think we need to take. If a different idea pops up into our mind, if someone suggests something, that we're not just shutting it out, but we're willing to entertain it because we just don't know the how. I know that this is hard in today's age because social media makes a lot of people's lives on full blast. And so we think that the way that person got there is also going to be the way we'll get there. And so we start emulating that and we start following the path that they took. But, to an extent, but if that path isn't authentic to you or there is some sort of feeling offness about it, but you're just doing it because you think that's how, then I honestly think that's when we get off track and that's when we delay our manifestation. But when we allow ourselves to be quiet, to create space, to be still, or do other things. There's a saying that tells us to when you don't know what else to do, just do your chores, do the basic things, do the thing that you have on your plate right now and allow, basically, is what I'm inserting, because usually when we're doing those things is when we get the ideas, when we get the nudges. And if we're completely aware because we're letting go, we're not micromanaging, we're not fixated on that thing that we're trying to bring about, ideas pop into our mind. And if we're consciously aware, we're mindful in the present moment, then we're able to take action on that. And honestly and truly, that's when we allow things to shift. When we're willing to entertain the ideas that pop into our mind, when we're willing to take action, when an idea pops into our mind, like I should go to that event. Oh, I should email this person. Oh, I should see how this person is doing. They're like random thoughts and nudges that come to our mind. When we follow them, we allow change. And really, to bring it all together, I'll give you the example that I just mentioned from my life that I think just blew my mind. Something else that I want to add before sharing the story is that there is a need for us to find this balance of being really clear about what we want, trusting what we want with belief and certainty that it's possible, but also letting it go and not suffocating the life out of it by needing it right away, right now, by really not having a dependency on it. Because truly, would you need what you want so badly if you already had it? The secret is being in that energy of having, by being grateful, by being at peace and accepting what is. And then because you're in that energy of acceptance, of peace, of not needing things to be any different, it happens. And the how or the way is unseen sometimes. And sometimes it surprises you, not because you didn't want it anymore or that you completely forgot about it, but maybe that could be the case, but it surprises you because you didn't really need it anymore. And the fact that it's there now is a surprise. I like to think about it like this. I like to think that everything has energy, because it does. And first creating space for the energy of what we want, then the physical form will appear. Whew, I think that's a really good mindset shift and a great way of putting it. Ooh, let me say that again. Okay. So if everything has energy, which it does, in order for it to come into our lives, we have to first create space for that energy. Then the physical form, the physical manifestation of it will appear. I love that so much. Okay, I honestly think that is a very concise way of putting it. Okay, so let me share the example, the big life-changing one, which honestly, I had it completely wrong on the how, all of it, basically. For a very long time, I've been wanting to manifest a relationship because I'm 30 something years old. That's the first time I'm saying it like that, but I've been ready for a relationship, I would say, as of this past year, 2023. Prior to that, I thought I was ready, but I had some work to do. I had a lot of inner healing, inner self-love, self-acceptance, just a lot of work that really led me here. If you've been here, you know that I'm really big on goal setting. I write goals on a monthly and yearly basis. And so at the beginning of 2023, I had written that it was the year I want to manifest a relationship, that I was really, truly ready for it. Have said I've been ready prior years, but I really wasn't, and I would escape, or my anxious avoidant attachment style would come into play. So that's kind of the work that I was referring to. And I did follow all of the secrets that people say to do. Like, write down the qualities you want in your person, write down what you want to be doing. What will a day in a life be like? Script about it. There's the scripting technique of thinking about a day sometime in the future, but writing it down in present tense. Like, for instance, it's July 20th and we are in Peru and we are doing XYZ today, or it's, September XY and we're celebrating our anniversary in Italy. I don't know, but like this process of manifesting through visualizing a future together and really bringing that future into the present moment by writing about it and feeling how you would feel as if you were experiencing it. And so I did all of that, but the how is, I think, where I was messing up. Like, I had an idea of who I thought my person was. I had an idea of how I thought it might happen. And, it's kind of silly in hindsight because I've really manifested so many things throughout my life experience that it's kind of crazy that I had such a blind spot when it comes to relationships. Another practice that I did while manifesting my person was I wrote affirmations in present tense about how grateful I am for the man that's in my life, how incredibly grateful I am that I'm with someone who understands me. I have a list of affirmations, and I was actually playing them the other day and I was like, oh my goodness, this is us to a T. Also, like, just the fact that it was right next to my bed on my nightstand made sure that I was seeing it and saying it, speaking it out loud, thinking it in my mind, and feeling the feelings of it. I think really helped accelerate and make that process come about even faster, because the more you repeat something, the more you believe it, the more it becomes instilled in your mind, and really a super effective way of rewiring our mind through the repetition of it. So basically, to set the scene, what I was manifesting was a relationship. I had done the process of writing down the qualities, the characteristics, scripting, really just being really specific and very clear about what I want, which is really important, knowing what you want and then being clear about it. But I had missed the how part. I was messing up on the how. And the moment I let go of the how, for many, many years, you guys, I was super against using dating apps. I would always tell my friends, especially when I lived in New York, I'd be like, no way, I'm not using dating apps. Whereas I saw my friends meet their boyfriends or now husbands on dating apps. I saw that it was a success, and I saw people dating and really having good relationships from dating apps. I was super against it. And so one day when I decided that, I'm going to let go of what I think it needs to be and just allow, I finally got to a place of surrender with it. And once I did, I had a random thought in my mind to get on Hinge. And I never, I just don't like Hinge. I don't like dating apps, like I just said. So I decided, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And I did. And honestly speaking, yes, I had a profile from New York from a few years ago. And it's so crazy because my settings hadn't been updated, like my age range and the proximity. And so I had, there's a section in Hinge that tells you all the people who have liked you or sent you comments. And so I went through that, and one of the first comments was from Garrett. Sorry, spoiler. But he had wrote a comment to me that was really cheeky and sweet. It was funny. I laughed out loud, and then I responded. And honestly, the only reason why I responded was because I thought his comment was funny. I just did not entertain the apps very much. And I had a few other matches I was talking to. I don't know. I just not a fan. I think it's a kind of a superficial way, but we started talking right away. And this person who I thought that I would go on one date with and probably never see again, because I had let go of all expectations. I had let go of really needing it to be any certain way. I was super open, super flexible. Went on a date that turned into 6-7 hour date. And it was honestly the most mind-blowing first date of our connection and chemistry. And we never stopped talking since that day. We ended up seeing each other every day thereafter, and we went on multiple dates back to back. He's my boyfriend now. And it's crazy because I never ever thought that I would meet the person that I would have a serious relationship with on a dating app. And this is exactly why I'm saying we have to let go of the how. I don't think he did either, like I think that when you think about it, it's like, well, if you really didn't think so, like, why did you go on it? Honestly, because I was just giving it a shot. I was being open-minded. I was open to the process, to how it would happen. And I hope that I conveyed how powerful it is when we let go of the how, because I had a whole different idea in mind. I thought versus what actually transpired and was possible when I was open and allowed. I mentioned there was a lot of work I had to do on myself prior to, and I want to say one other thing about that. I think relationships are one of the biggest modes of learning in life. Like, we learn so much about ourselves through relationships, and they can be such a big healing journey. But sometimes I really truly believe that sometimes we need to do our healing and growth on our own. And then we hit a point in the road where now we can do it with someone else. I don't think we ever stop healing. We ever stop growing. I think it's a continuous lifetime journey, but we get better. We improve in certain areas. We up level. We, get to a place where we need to do it less often, but because our energy source, our battery can last longer. But I do think that for me, especially where I'm at in my journey right now, I think that it's a continuous thing. A lot of people ask me how I feel the way I do most of the time, like how I have so much energy. And it's because of the daily work I put in to my energy. And I think that, this is just coming to my mind. If you're listening to this and want to do some of this work together, just reach out to me. I really love working with people on this, and I find so much value in it. And I genuinely mean that, or otherwise I couldn't sit here and tell you this. Like, it's something that you need, just DM me or email me. I love hearing from you. Going back to the story that I just shared, it was honestly unplanned when I was thinking about creating a manifestation stories. But when I was talking about letting go of the how, it just felt so relevant because, one, it's such a big recent development but also an amazing example of how much I resisted the apps and how when I let go of my resistance to it and I gave it a shot, it took me by complete surprise. Honestly, I had been on another Hinge date, like I want to say January of 2023. And then before that, sometime in New York. I don't know what year. I mean, this is like when I say that I just like really despise it, I despise it. But meeting Garrett on there was the biggest surprise. And for both of us, but especially for me, the reason why I was so against the apps is because I feel like you don't get to feel someone's energy. You don't get what their vibe is or how they are. And I think that's just so much more important to me than looks or what people say. And so it really took me by surprise, which really brings all the points that I mentioned earlier together. Letting it go, allowing, and really not needing it, but it coming to fruition and surprising you. I was really at a point of being happy as I was. I was at a point of just of radical acceptance. Like I remember literally journaling in early December, writing, and even in November as I was closing out yoga teacher training, just coming to terms with the fact that it was near the end of 2023 and I was so sure and so certain when I was doing my manifestation work that this was the year 2023 be the year where I'd finally be with my person. And it was ending and I just thought, okay, well, there's really just like 3 weeks left and I guess another holiday season being single. And I did an episode on, holiday magic and making it the best because of like the work that I did when I was feeling this way. And it's just crazy to think that literally that same week is when everything changed. I did some work and I was really like in full acceptance. Like, okay, we are where we are. I am happy as I am. Like things are good as they are. I trust the timing. I trust God. I trust the universe. I trust life's plan. And as soon as I did, I accepted, it happened. It came into place. And I don't think I've ever been in that radical acceptance before, especially in terms of relationships. I was always unhappy about it. Like I couldn't catch a break. But then I shifted into acceptance, just being okay with everything as they were and let go. And then the ideas kept coming up. The thoughts came into my mind. I was on a high flying disc. I had just come back from Hawaii a couple weeks before. We did have a pretty devastating, I'd lost my grandma. And so, I came back with all these ideas of what I wanted to do. And then we all just like became so incredibly sad, but I still felt so connected to her. And the whole experience, honestly, coming back from yoga teacher training to doing some inner work. I had just done hypnotherapy. I did some work that really allowed me to let go and release of the baggage that I was holding on to. And then everything that I had listed out that I wanted in a man showed up. And it was complete surprise. I was actually shook and it was as if I got on a new timeline. Like I honestly feel that we shifted timelines and things changed and have never been the same since that time period. It's just fun to really think about how things fall into place and how unexpected they are. So earlier I mentioned how when I first learned about The Secret and the law of attraction, shortly thereafter I started applying. It resonated with me so much. It really moved me and I started applying it. And in hindsight, my life shifted a lot. And even then, I'll share with you some stories. Like, for instance, I had just finished my senior year and I was trying to figure out what to do next. And really, even before I finished high school, now that I think about it, in high school, I was so excited about this new program that was being offered for the advanced technology. It was called the Tech Center, which it allowed us to get our Associates of Applied Science at the time of graduating high school if we got accepted into this technical program. And for me, I honestly never thought that I would be interested in doing hair or cosmetology, but cosmetology was one of the options. And they were only accepting 40 students or so out of, and there's really only so much time in the day when it comes to going to high school and going to a program all within like a window of, I believe it was all between 7 to 4 p.m. And at the time, we lived in Utah, and the state of Utah has a 2,000-hour program requirement. I didn't really think anything of it. I thought, wow, that would be amazing. I was really excited about the opportunity to be able to do that. And so me and my friends were like, why not? Let's go test for it. And so we went and took the test, and I was one of the students that got it, one of the 40 students in the entire district. And when I think about it, it was because, for one, I wasn't desperate about needing it. I wasn't like, oh my God, I have to have this. But I was giving it energy in the sense that I was excited about it. And I was optimistic that I did well on the test and that I could, qualify for it, because ultimately it accounted for both high school credits and college credits. So you had to demonstrate a certain level of knowledge in math, English, etc., I think. And so anyway, I ended up getting it. I ended up graduating high school with an applied associates in science. And so that ended up giving me opportunities in terms of scholarships. And I ended up doing a competition, which resulted in me getting a scholarship to the University of Utah. I mean, in hindsight, like, it's just like, what are the odds of that, But it wasn't anything I had dreamt about doing my whole life or anything, but it helped pave the way. I didn't know how I was going to go, what I was going to go into. I didn't know how it would happen, but one step at a time, it did. And let me share with you more tangible stories where things that I intentionally manifested. Like, I remember laying in my bed, and I was like 18 or 19, and I was thinking how I need to manifest more financial abundance in order to just live more comfortably and with more ease, because I always had a couple jobs, and I always was like working while going to school. I had a job since I was literally 14, and I remember going to bed literally every night thinking about how it would feel if my finances were in a better place. I would literally say, thank you, God, for all the money that I have, all the opportunities that are lining up for me. Everything just is going my way. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I would go to bed really with a grateful heart and a big smile, because if you believe that as you're going to bed, it's hard not to feel good and not to be in a positive energy. I ended up learning about various scholarships and ways of getting my school paid for very, very randomly through my boyfriend at the time. He helped me so much, but I feel like I wouldn't have even been looking down those paths, those means, had I not made the intention to be more abundant and to have a better financial situation. And as a result, attracted so many different ways of getting the money that I needed, of manifesting the opportunities, of manifesting like the abundance. And I ended up having really high paying jobs throughout college that enabled me to do well and to be okay. And so I was a firm believer right off the bat. It's so wild because I was a sophomore. I haven't even gone into my junior year in college, and I get an email that Goldman Sachs is coming on campus. They're doing an information session about internships with them. And I remember being like, you know what? Yeah, I'll go and learn. I actually didn't really even know who Goldman Sachs was. I looked into them. My friends told me that, yes, you definitely should go. And so to do the internship, you have to be a junior going into your senior year. Back then, they didn't do internships for junior. They didn't do internships for prior years. It was like right before you got out of college. And at least the school that I went to. And this is back in 2010. So it's a long time ago, 14 years ago. And the people that I met with, they said, you know what? We're actually, for the first time ever, we're going to have, I went and spoke to them, the VPs that were there, the representatives that were there from Goldman Sachs, and I loved it. I mean, that's honestly what the only thing that I remember was alarming to me was that everybody woke up at 5 a.m. because they work Eastern hours. But, my life changed from that. And I remember thinking like, oh, is this even possible? I went and spoke to them and they said, you know what? This year, I think we may be able to make an exception. You guys, when I tell you that I was one of 3 people in the entire internship class, which there was several hundred across the United States, maybe 200, 300, I don't know. In the entire internship class, I was one of 3 people that was a sophomore going into their junior year. They made an exception, and it wasn't all that easy. I had many, many rounds of interviews. There was a couple months that I didn't hear from them, and I was like, okay, I may have just flunked that interview because they didn't even care to call me to tell me. But, apparently they were just busy. I don't know. But doesn't matter. The point being is that I kept my faith. I showed up anyway. And talk about financial abundance. What I was making that summer in my internship was what people made as a salary after years and years of working a job. It was just mind-blowing. And it really changed the trajectory of my life. Like the fact that, for one, they never came to my college. It was the first year they were going to my college. I was at the Salt Lake Community College at the time. They took 3 people across the country to join as a sophomore, 20 years old. Then the story gets better. During the internship, I remember thinking, wow, how cool would it be if I could work here during the school year? I mean, that was just never a thing. That had never happened before. And you guys, I just put it out there. I thought about it. I smiled. I thought that would be fun and exciting and expansive. And I just let it go. I didn't suggest it. One would think that it would be a good idea to suggest it. I still remember, so maybe that was a nudge that I didn't follow. But even then, this is when things are, I guess, meant to be. The universe interferes. I did my internship. I remember having our final presentation. I blacked out. Literally, I was so nervous. I don't remember what I said during the final presentation. But I worked really hard all summer. I did my best. I got really great feedback. And because we were the younger people of the cohort, 3 of us were younger, we got to meet with the head of Salt Lake office several times through this summer. I got to make really incredible connections, and my friends from the internship are still my friends today. I love the people I met through the Goldman Sachs internship. Okay, so back to the story. I was going about my life, literally reading emails, preparing for college. I just started my first year at University of Utah, and I received an email from the head of the team I was on. I was in GS Bank USA at the time, and she's such an incredible lady. She emailed me. I know her. I don't want to say her name because maybe she doesn't want to be on this podcast, but she emailed me saying, Shalay, what do you think about working part-time with us throughout the school year? Do you think you'll have capacity? Literally falling out of my chair, jaw dropped, what? Absolutely. Are you kidding me? Who wouldn't want to make the salary someone makes per hour? Meaning I can work less hours. I don't need to work 2 jobs. I can just work 1 job, half the hours. And I think I was still making more than I would if I had literally 2 jobs. And honestly, money aside, I was learning more on the internship than I did throughout college altogether. I learned so much through my positions and the roles that I had and the teams that I was helping throughout the summer. And then throughout the year. Like I became a campus ambassador and I was helping recruit people. And there are several friends that I have that I recruited. When one of my really close friends always gives me credit for taking her to Goldman. But honestly, not only was I able to make that impact and change for my life, I helped others do the same. And I felt so happy, so fulfilled, so excited. Like I literally entered a different timeline with this internship. It changed my life in so many ways. It was a dream come true. You guys, I worked 15 hours a week at Goldman Sachs. It is unheard of. People would work 10 to 15 hours a day. Like 10 hours a day is the minimum. The culture is known to be 50-hour work weeks minimum, typically 55 to 60, I think is the average. But, throughout my career, I worked anywhere between 50 to 80, 85. So a week, 85 hours a week. And so, I didn't know that then, 20-year-old me. But what I'm saying is that it was really unheard of. And as I started going to the office, I had these projects I was working on. And I just felt so in shock at first myself. Like, wow, I'm doing this. My team was incredible. I loved my team. And honestly, in the entire floor, in the entire Salt Lake City office, I would say with confidence to this day, sorry other teams, that our team was the coolest that everybody wanted to be a part of, because GS Bank USA was this small team of like 2 rows of people, whereas like the rest of the floor was private wealth management, and the other floor is just, I had a lot of friends from my internship class, and literally our team was the best team. Like it was the best people. Everyone was so chill, fun, and just the fact that I energetically aligned with that was just like mind-blowing to me. It made me feel so blessed and so grateful. And so I continued to be grateful, but I also continued to give thanks, and I continued to ask for help in terms of allowing me to continue to do what I'm doing. Honestly, there were people on the floor. I remember one guy who recently just made MD, I saw on LinkedIn. I remember he was on my floor, and I remember we got in the elevator. He's like, aren't you one of the summer interns? I remember your presentation. I'm like, yeah. He's like, what are you doing here? I didn't think any of you were left. And I was like, yeah, I got a part-time role. They're like, wow, you got a part-time role? I've never heard of that. Literally, it was unheard of. Like even if women who came back from their maternity and wanted to now work part-time, they would find someone else that wants to be part-time too, and they would share a role basically, and each work part-time hours under one head count. I don't know, it's kind of a funny it's a funny model, but that's how it was back then at least. And so a part-time role was unheard of. And the fact that I thought about it, I gave it energy, I was excited about it, and I just let it go. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't need it. It came to fruition. And then my entire career really went off this premise that I would show up, I would do my best, and I always would think about what's next for me in terms of the next role, and I would start behaving and giving thanks as if it's already happened. So really the takeaway that I want to share from all of this is that there's so much power in being clear and knowing what you want and putting it out there in terms of putting it into the universe. Like maybe speaking it out loud, maybe just being thankful for it, but giving energy to it. What I said earlier, creating that energetic space for it, then it will come to fruition. And, letting it go and just knowing that it will come because you're giving it energy. It's just so powerful. I feel like I needed to hear that myself right now, because I've been working on certain things that I'm trying to manifest, and I have been having a bit of a challenge or struggle with it. And I feel like I needed this reminder. So I'm happy I'm recording this podcast episode. I ended up becoming a Goldman baby. I was working at the firm for over 10 years, and I grew through the firm, and the culture just really aligned with me in terms of the meritocracy, rewarding high performers. And come to think of it, my internship at Goldman ended up also helping me decide on a major, because I was just studying business and I was trying to decide which emphasis I want to lead on. And I chose operations management because I loved what I was doing. Like, I loved making process improvements. I was basically a product analyst and in product management and process improvements. Like, I would look at a process and have like so many ideas, and I thrived. I did so well. And I think part of that is because, one, I was super excited, I was super present, and so many ideas kept coming to me, and I was one of the top performers, and I got, into so many different roles on the back of that. Like, I started as an analyst, full-time analyst, and instead of having a regular analyst job, I was given an associate level job, and my career just moved really quickly because of, I think, how excited and passionate I was, but also because I was so present and I could get the ideas. Like, my mind wasn't somewhere else while I was doing my job. I was super attention oriented. I was super detail oriented. It's just crazy to think about all of this. You guys, I have so many stories. This episode has already turned out to be so long, but I want to share a couple more. And maybe what I'll do is I'll make it a series of manifestation stories on my Instagram or TikTok, and it can keep going. Or maybe I'll make a part 2. Let me know what you think of it. If you like the stories, if they are helpful, and I can make a part 2. Just let me know, because I am 30 something, and so I have a lot of stories, even recently. Like, my boyfriend has an oil that he uses for his hair, and I love it because he has curly hair like me. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to get this oil too. I feel like it's helped his hair transform over the last couple months, and I want to use it too. So I remember just looking at it and saying the name, being like, okay, rosemary and mint oil. Just saying it out loud, kind of putting the mental image, even though I have aphantasia, putting the mental image of it in my mind so I can find it or Amazon it later that day. I kid you not, you guys, several hours later, we ended up dropping by Marshall's, some things I had to return. And so I came across this outfit that I really liked. Like, it was right at the front. So I was like, can I try this on? And as we were walking to the dressing room, I'm just looking at the woman's stuff as we're walking, and that oil was right there. Like, I have known that he's using that oil for some time. I've gone to Marshall's several times, never seen that oil. But the day when I decided that I want to buy this oil, I see it like right in front of me. It was just like as if it was plopped right there. And so maybe, one can say like, it's a really small manifestation, and I share it because I really manifest things on a daily / very frequently basis. Like, several times a week, things happen that I'm like, yeah, oh my God, I wanted that to happen. And so I have a lot of faith and belief in it. But granted, I've been practicing for what's now 15, 16, 17, I don't know, a long time, 15, 16 years. So I've had lots of practice. It's like second nature to me. But another way to think about it is that it's really making your point of attraction really clear to what you want. So it's not that the oil wouldn't have existed or have been there. It's not like, it's just that I didn't declare that I wanted it. And I think that's the same thing, that's the same analogy of the radio, of tuning into that channel. It's like, it's there and it's waiting for you, but you're just not tuned into it. If you have a 5-minute journal, you know that there is this analogy at the beginning that talks about when, you're car shopping, or you're like, you like white cars, or let's say you want to buy a white Honda. I don't know. I think that's a car example it gave. Then you start seeing the white Honda everywhere. I totally experienced this when I was in college. I was like, I think I had bought an Acura TL, and before I bought it, I was looking for them, and I remember seeing them everywhere, and I was like, everyone has a TL, like this person, that person, or like on my way to school. So whatever it might be, it's like knowing what you want makes it so that out of all the things you see, out of all the noise that you have in a day, in your daily life, you know what to grab. So maybe it's the law of attraction, or maybe it's being aware and being clear and being decisive about what you want. Another story that I want to share is New York. I think New York is a big one. I've had so many, actually. What just came to my mind is California. Okay, so before our family moved to Laguna Niguel, which that always blows me away. And I thank God it's like such a beautiful place in the world. And if you haven't been to Laguna, I highly recommend putting it on your list of places to go. Laguna Beach, especially Dana Point. Okay, back to what I wanted to say. I think it was in that same time frame of like 2008, 2009 when I had first learned about this, but about The Secret, maybe before then. I think it was actually before then. I may have been no, I think it was 2008, 2009. Me, my best friend Natasha, and my sister came to California for a trip. And we flew into LA, and one of the days our friend brought us to Orange County. Because I have aphantasia, I don't recall memories very well, unfortunately. But we were in Orange County, and we went to a beach in Laguna, and the beach was stunning, the Ritz-Carlton beach, and it's very beautiful. And we also went to the rooftop lounge. And I remember talking to Natasha, my sister, and our friend being like, I pointed to certain people that were in our proximity and I said, wow, look at them. Imagine what it'd be like to live here. This is from the perspective of a girl who was born in Iran, lived in Tehran for a season, then moved to Turkey, which was pretty cold, also for a season, but very long winters. Then Utah had extremely long winters. Like, it would snow from October to June almost every year until recently with the climate changes, but it was so cold. It was freezing, and it was always gray and basically like black and white outside because of how the snow would just build on for months at a time. And we're in this like beautiful, super blue skies, like not a cloud in the sky, just everything looked like out of a picture, out of a movie, and I was like, imagine living here. Just, I hadn't experienced a climate like that my entire life. And granted, I was only like 18 or 19, but it was just a very expansive experience for me and a mental image that really was pushing me to want to manifest it. And maybe I was younger. It doesn't really matter, but I have bad memory, as I mentioned. And we all like agreed and talked about it and just entertained that idea. And then I remember when we were at the beach, in the Ritz-Carlton beach, thinking just that view and that image of it and just thinking, wow, this is what it would be like to live here. Because I was like watching families or people just hanging out at the beach. Like, who knows if they actually live there? They look like locals. But I remember thinking like, wow, this is what it'd be like to live here. Now, I forgot about all of this, right? When we came out to visit my brother a couple years later, when we continued to come out here, and to be honest, I completely forgot about it. But I remember having that desire, putting it out there and just imagining it and visualizing it and just letting it go. And to me, when I say visualizing it, it's just thinking about it. Like, I'm not actually visualizing because I don't have that ability, but just thinking about it and feeling what it would feel like. Because that is key. Like, feelings are really important in manifestation. And I think that's how I've been able to manifest. Having aphantasia and not being able to visualize is feeling what it would feel like. So I remember like focusing on that, letting it go, because really my brother moved here and then we continued to come visit him. I would fly out here pretty often because he had his place in Orange County. So we would visit him, and a lot of other experiences, took over that. So I kind of forgot about it. But I remember the first time driving through Laguna Niguel, just thinking like, wow. Oh, another thing is when I worked at a day spa in Salt Lake, one of the girls that came to the spa as a hairstylist, she was from Laguna Niguel. And I remember thinking like, wow, how cool, like to be from Laguna Niguel. And you guys, like, I never in a million years thought that our family would move to Laguna Niguel. So a year later or so, when my brother like brought us to Laguna to like look at houses and stuff, I remember thinking, wow, wait, this is the place where Melissa is from. And I remember thinking like, this place is gorgeous. I mean, if you've been to Laguna Niguel, it's like full of hills and whatnot. And it wasn't until recently, I want to say it was like 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago. I don't know, but maybe it was 5 years ago. We were at the beach, at the Ritz-Carlton beach, and it hit me. Like, I was with my family. It was that same spot that I was sitting in that I had sat in with my sister and best friend and such. And it was that same view. It was like deja vu, but it was that. I just remember having that conversation with them and being like, wow, imagine what it'd be like to live here. And now we did. And I had completely forgotten. Because I had come to California so many times after that, especially LA, Woodland Hills, like Santa Monica and Newport Beach, mainly Irvine, mainly like other parts of Orange County. And I had just forgotten. And then I lived here 2013 through 2014 before I moved to New York 2015. And I still hadn't registered that wait, that manifestation literally happened. So now, like, time passed, like 5 years later. At the time I lived in New York, but my family was living in Laguna, and I would visit several times a year. And I lived here too, right before. So it's just, the odds are, it's like hard to believe. It's mind-blowing, but it happened. And I would have never known the how. If you think about, if I was the person who said, you know what, I want to live in Laguna and this is how it's going to happen, maybe it would have happened because, like, you know, that's possible. You can logically do it, but it was meant to happen on its own, in its own accord. Oh my goodness. A really big part of the story is before starting college, before going to University of Utah, I really wanted to move here. I wanted to move to California. I wanted to go to UCLA or another school, but it turned out that it was a little too expensive, and it made sense because of other things, the way it panned out. I got scholarships, and a part of me did try to logically make it happen. A part of me did try to figure out how I was going to move here, like I had hoped back then. But it didn't work out that way. School wasn't the route because I thought, oh, perfect. Like, I can go to school and I can be there. I always wanted to move to California, but then school happened to be in Utah. My friends were there. It all worked out. I was dating someone and I had a serious relationship. It was my first serious relationship back then, and it just like fit and it worked out. So I stayed. And then Goldman Sachs happened. And I remember thinking, wow, if I hadn't stayed, Goldman would have never happened. And then when my family was ready to move to Orange County, they were ready to move to Laguna Niguel, I wasn't going to move with them. Initially, I was like, no, I got an apartment in downtown Salt Lake. I moved out because my family was moving. And once they moved is when I decided, you know what, I'm going to move too, because Utah just didn't feel like home anymore. But I remember thinking back then, this was like literally 11 years ago. I remember thinking, wow, I never thought my family would move to California before me, because I always thought like I would love to live in California. But then in between 2010 and 12, I ended up going to New York and I fell in love with the city so much. I wanted to move there so badly. And so something that I really wanted, you know, years prior, like when I was 17, 18, 19, ended up happening years later without me manipulating it, without me making it happen. And I think I had tried, it didn't work, it wasn't feasible, but something better happened. Like, if I still ended up living here, but I got the experience of going to University of Utah, I got to experience my first real relationship. I got to experience so many big lessons because I let go of the how. And I got a dream job that you could have in college. And literally I met dream friends that I have to this day. Like, these people are like so special and dear to me. And because I know them, I've made so many incredible memories across the United States, literally have so many incredible people as a result of it. And then it shaped my life for the past decade to be the abundant life that I do have, because I let go of the how and I trusted the nudges, I trusted the process, and I allowed myself to take inspired action. I allowed myself to be flexible. I had an idea, but I was willing to be guided. I was willing to be steered in a different direction. And I think that is so, so key and powerful. I also want to add, this is how I manifested New York City. So I fell in love with New York, as I mentioned, back in 2012-ish. It was when I went to New York for analyst training. But someone suggested I move to New York. And I said, no, I'm not going to. I want to be where my family is on the West Coast. Like, I want to get married where my family is. Also because I had suggested to my family before all of this, before they even moved to California, that I wanted to go to New York. And they were like, you want to live 2,000-3,000 miles away? Are you crazy? And I remember thinking, yeah, they're right. Like, that is all the way across the country. And also, like, my family moved all the way across the world so that we could have freedom and be together. And I'm just going to leave them. It kind of was like this loyalty thing. So I decided that, that was out of the question, even though I really love New York. And I remember sitting in the backseat of a cab. I think we were riding through Lower East Side. I think we were on like 2nd or 3rd Ave. And I remember thinking, like, I want to live here. I still remember the buildings I was looking at. It was like a picture that stayed in my mind of like looking at the buildings and thinking, I want to live here. This is my home. And I had shared the story in the prior episode that I made about manifestations. I literally had tears in my eyes the first time I was in Manhattan because it just felt like home. It just felt like where home would feel. And I hadn't experienced that before. And I think a lot of it is because it does have a lot of similarities to Tehran, where I was born and lived at the beginning of my life. But ultimately, I let go of that because it wasn't logical and it didn't make sense. And it wasn't until like 2013, it was late 2013, early 2014, where I just kept having dreams of being in New York City, of being in Manhattan. I kept seeing my friends on Facebook update their status as having moved to New York, or like people that I knew from Goldman or college, just being in New York. And I was thinking like, wow, like everyone is moving to New York. But I let it go. I had just moved to California just a few months prior, and I was giving it a full shot. It was right after I bought my car that I literally woke up one morning just knowing that I need to move to New York. It was just like as if I literally felt like I heard a voice say, move to New York. And so I remember getting up. I still remember that moment, looking outside and being like, okay, I'm going to move to New York. It was very firm knowing. Now how do I do it? So I started like updating my resume, reaching out to people, reaching out to contacts to look at my resume, to maybe refer me to jobs. I was applying to jobs. I started like this whole frenzy of how, but then it was taking a long time. I wasn't hearing back. Things weren't progressing. I was struggling. I want to say that this is like March timeframe in 2014, February or March timeframe. And it was rough. I was working my job at the time. I was working with my brother. I worked a lot of hours. And so throughout the months, summer came to pass. I had some interviews. I met with some people that I knew. I met with some mentors. I was just trying to get advice. I did some interviews. They didn't go too well. And then I came across Quantum Leap meditations, and I found one and I listened to it every single day. And the meditation asked you to visualize what it would feel like. It walked you through this process of walking through this beautiful garden and really imagining yourself getting to the precipice of what you want and feeling the feelings of it. And now in hindsight, I'm like, wow, I didn't know I was supposed to actually visualize and see things. Listen to my aphantasia story if you want to hear more about this. But I was just thinking about it and feeling what it would feel like. And I was filled with joy and excitement. And you guys, I did this every single day. And things started to change. Things started to move differently. I got hints of like, hey, why don't you just apply directly to the Goldman office in New York? Like, why don't you set up time with this MD that you knew? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And so I started following my nudges. And then I had this idea that, you know what? I think that the job that I have right now is taking too much of my energy. I need to make space in order for me to really take this job hunt seriously, in order for me to really do this. And there is some personal stories in the background happening, right? Like I needed to tell my parents, and like my mom knew that I wasn't really happy here because I did give it a full shot, but the energy wasn't flowing with me. I kept getting tickets, or my car got towed a couple times. Like, so many random things would happen that I was just fed up, but also just energetically didn't feel right. I felt like the universe was like kicking me out of Southern California. I was like, it's time to go. It's time to go. It was before my sister had moved here. My best friend, Natasha, she lived in LA, and spend weekends with her there, but LA just didn't feel like home. It didn't feel right. I didn't feel like I fit in. And I just kept having visions and feelings of being in New York. I would have these like really vivid dreams, which, by the way, shook me when a couple years later, some of those dreams happened. I remember being like, I remember waking up to this dream and thinking like, it doesn't make sense that I'm in NYC with XYZ people. And it literally happened. How is, again, beyond you and I. Like, the universe, or just life in general, has such a way of doing things. So much happens in the background, and we just have to trust it. We just have to believe it. We just have to show up for what we feel we should be doing right now. And then everything else happens in the background. Everything else comes to work out. So what ended up happening after I did those meditations, after I did those quantum leap meditations every single day, I started following the ideas that I got. I decided that, you know what, I need to make space. So I told my brother and his partner that I was leaving. I give my notice. You guys, it was the very last day, and I was going to focus on finding a job. You guys, I convinced my mom. She was like, you know what? Yeah, this is right for you. Maybe go for a couple years and see how it is. And so I was like, yeah, just a couple years. It turned out to be 7.5 years. But you guys, it was the very last day at the office. My brother had decorated my office. I had a corner office. He had ordered catering, and I was from Panini Cafe, my favorite. We were just like, I was so surprised and in awe, and just like had a big cheeky smile, and it's bittersweet. And I got a call that very day, my last day. I got a call from a recruiter from Goldman Sachs. And prior to this, I was interviewing with JP and Morgan Stanley and like Accenture, and I want to say another consulting firm. It was Deloitte. And I was having all these conversations, and the moment I answered the phone that day, and it was the Goldman recruiter saying like, hey, I see you worked with us before. I was just looking at your resume. I just had the biggest knowing in my heart that, okay, this is it. This is where I'm going back to Goldman, because I like the culture. I knew the culture. It was always like deemed to be swimming upwards to go from a high value location such as Salt Lake to the New York office. But it just felt, I remember thinking in that moment, wow, my very last day at the job, I knew I had to make space for this to come in. I did, and they called. And then the next few months was rounds and rounds of interviewing. I actually had a trip planned to New York with Natasha. And so the interviews ended up falling in that window. Literally, they were asking me what time, like, how does this week of October look? And I was like, wow, I'm actually going to be in New York that week. Like, the fact that everything happened behind the scenes and it just fell into place. Like, I was planning a trip for fun. It ended up being one of my interviews fell that day. I remember leaving New York, being at the airport with Natasha. I got a call from another company like asking me about follow-up interview. And I remember thinking, I'm going to move to New York. This is happening. This is falling into place. And it just took that bravery. It took a lot, right? What I just said, it wasn't easy. I had several rounds. I think I had 8 interviews or so. It's not like I literally had already worked at the firm for many years, like 3 years at that point, I think 2.5 years. I'm sure they used my reviews and like the feedback I had or called my old managers. But like, what I mean is it wasn't like it came easy, but the doors opened, the opportunities presented themselves, and I was able to take action. Because I think a lot of times what we need is the opportunity, right? Really, the lesson from that story, what it took was me believing that it would be possible, not figuring out all the details of the how, but just trusting to quit my job when I did. Trusting, obviously I was able to support myself for a couple months, but trusting that it was going to work out and it did. Like, I left my job and my interviews happened right after that. And by Thanksgiving of that year, I had my job offer and I moved by January. And I have so many more manifestation stories as to things that happened in New York City, like my promotions. This has turned out to be such a long episode. So let me know if you liked it. My apartment in New York City, I think that is one of the biggest stories, honestly. But I wanted to lead up to that because I think the stories that I shared give you a good example of the various ways we can manifest. And really the simplest way in my mind that most people manifest, whether or not they know it or not, is putting a desire out there. And that's why we do so much work on making our desires or our intentions or our thoughts positive, because we're always manifesting what we focus on or what we give energy to. So choosing to be deliberate and choosing to think positive about what we're about to manifest, choosing what we're about to focus on to be positive, is what is going to determine how many positive or joyful or happy experiences you'll have on a day-to-day basis. So I think it is finding this balance about, I think it's knowing that there are tools out there. There are ways that you can visualize and think about and be happy about and give thanks to what you want to experience. But at the same time, be okay without it and let it go and let it be and be surprised when it comes up, because you don't have to have it anyway because you already have it. I hope that, through the stories that I shared, ties in the principles of, again, being clear, taking action, having trust and faith, not needing to know exactly how it will happen, loosening our grip. I think that is one of the hardest things for most people to do, including me. Loosening our grip and not trying to micromanage, because that grip, that holding tight, comes from fear, comes from fearing the unknown. But the truth is things really shift when we shift our mindset to expect that the unknown can be positive, that it can be better than we can imagine, that the way it unfolds, that things can happen in a beautiful way, that things can unfold in a beautiful way, despite our control or power or micromanagement of it. And so I hope this episode inspires you to think about the things that you want to experience that you haven't yet, or that you've been calling in for a long time, that you're losing faith on, that you're losing hope on, and think about how you've been going about it. What are the thoughts that you've been having? Maybe a practical takeaway for you is to start auditing the thoughts that you have. Maybe start journaling in the morning. What are the first thoughts in your mind thinking about having what you want? Do you believe it's possible for you? If so, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you believe it? And really journal on why that is. Why do you not believe it? Or if you do believe it, entertain that further. Give it more energy, empower it. Really energize it. And if you're not familiar with visualization or quantum leap meditations, there's so many of them on YouTube. And this just reminds me that I wanted to do a visualization podcast episode. So I will do that and put it out there. But I hope that the stories inspired you. If you have any questions on anything that I've said on manifesting, let me know. I'm happy to help you out. Maybe others have the same questions and they can benefit from hearing it too. So just let me know. It can be anonymous. If you're feeling stuck with something, if you feel like you have a lot of doubt or limiting beliefs in relation to getting what you want, then contact me. You don't have to do it alone. We can work together. I love hearing from you. If you have manifestation stories you want to share, I'm all ears. I would love to hear them. I hope this episode inspires you to be more intentional about the things that you want and the things that you focus on. Let me know your thoughts, and I'm sending you so much love. I hope you have a beautiful rest of the month, and I'll speak to you next week.